Okay, good Vach, a Freiliche Vach. Just coming now from Parshas Vayera, and this week is the Rebbe Rashab's birthday, the 20th of Cheshvan. And there's a famous story about the Rebbe Rashab. He was 4 or 5 years old. He came to see his grandfather, Tzemach Tzedek, and he was crying. And his grandfather said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I'm crying because I learned in the Torah that Hashem appeared to Abraham, and I want to know." He's crying. Why is it that Hashem appears to Avram and does not appear to me? So Tzemach Tzedek told the Rebbe Rashab that when a Jew is 99 years old, a Jew at Tzedek is 99 years old, and he decides that he should circumcise himself, he deserves that Hashem should appear to him. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek told the Rebbe Rashab. And if you look in the biography of the Rebbe Rashab, you could see that this was what his whole life was about revealing Hashem in the world. The Rebbe Rashab was called the Rambam of Chassidus. Just like Maimonides took the entire oral Torah, and he arranged it in a way that we're able to study the inner dimension of Torah, in the same way that you're able to study the real parts of Torah. Maimonides took the entire Talmud and he made it in a very systematic, orderly way, to be able to really get a handle on the entire corpus of the oral Torah. In a similar way, the Rebbe Rashab did the same thing for the inner dimension of Torah, which is, of course, a totally different kind of discipline. And yet, despite the fact that the Rebbe Rashab is discussing all these mystical, deep concepts, yet he arranged all these concepts in a way that you could study them the same way you study Maimonides, giving you a crystal clear understanding of the oral Torah, so too you could have a crystal clear understanding of the inner dimension of Torah. So that's one of the more famous achievements of Rebbe Rashab. And similarly, the Rebbe Rashab made the yeshiva of Tomchei Tmimim, yeshiva where the students are called Tamimim. Tamimim means they are whole. They're called whole because they are studying the entire Torah, not just the revealed parts of Torah, but also the inner dimension of Torah, with a focus on prayer and dedication to Hashem, not just on knowledge. There was one of the students in the yeshiva they used to call him Yankel the Polisher, Yankel from Poland. They call him Yankel from Poland because most of the students in the yeshiva were from Lithuania, from Russia. But this Yankel, his uncle, was very interested in learning about rabbis and tzaddikim and righteous people, and he traveled around the world. He traveled around the world meeting various rabbis, and when he returned from his trip, he told his nephew the following. He said, "Voiles der Regen, how fortunate are the eyes who look at the eyes that have seen a true tzaddik. How lucky are you to look in my eyes," said his Yankel Pelisher's uncle, who you could see the eyes of someone who has seen a real tzaddik. And he was referring to the Rebbe Rashab. He said the Rebbe Rashab, on the one hand, he has zwei gildene zegers, he has 2 golden watches he wears on his heart, but under the golden watches is a leiv nishbar be'emes, is a truly broken heart. And he was so taken by the Rebbe Rashab, he told his nephew, Yankel, that he wants him to go travel to learn in the yeshiva of the Rebbe Rashab. I guess having 2 golden watches was considered extravagant at that time, but he was saying to his nephew to realize who the Rebbe Rashab is and how it's worth it for you to travel to visit and to learn in that yeshiva. And that's where his nephew studied. I want to tell you one story about the Rebbe Rashab's. On the one hand, we're talking about how the Rebbe Rashab caused revelation of godliness, and he made a yeshiva where they studied the inner dimension of Torah, and how he's the Maimonides of Chassidus, and he brought things down, these mystical concepts in a vivid way. I want to share with you one story that highlights that the Rebbe Rashab wasn't only revealing these mystical concepts, but also very sensitive to people in a way that defies our understanding. When he was a child, um, there was a tailor that had made a dress for his mother, and when the tailor dropped off the dress, and the way it worked in those days was you would buy the material, you give it to the tailor, and the tailor would have to return the leftover material. But this tailor wasn't so honest, so he kept the leftover material in his pocket. So the Rebbe Rashab, little child, saw the material in his pocket. He took it out of the pocket, um, or he may notice it. I'm not sure exactly, but he noticed it and he pointed it out. And the tailor, of course, was completely ashamed. And his mother said to him, "What'd you do? You just embarrassed the Jew." And the Rebbe Rashab was so distraught that he embarrassed the Jew that he couldn't come to himself for days. And he went to his grandfather, to his father, to ask for a tikkun for his soul, rectifying his soul for causing embarrassment. Didn't. And so I want to share with you another story that happened many years later. The Rebbe Rashab had to travel outside of his hometown in the city of Lubavitch for many, many reasons. He's traveled because of health reasons. He traveled because of um, times he had to try to influence the government for their various things. So he was on such a trip with his son, the previous Rebbe. And at that time, the Rebbe Rashab would sort of relax after lunch. But the way he relaxed was he wouldn't sit on the couch, he wouldn't lie on the couch. He would sort of lean on the couch, deep in thought, with his hand on his forehead. His leg was propped up on the couch while he had his hand in deep thought on his forehead. And when he was, so to speak, resting like this, we went on for a long time. And the previous Rebbe was a little bit um, bothered by this because it seemed like he was in some kind of trance, and he wanted his father to come out of this trance. What's going on? It was a little frightening. So he made some noise in the room. Noise didn't help. Previous Rebbe moved some furniture in the room, and the Rebbe Rashab didn't notice at all. Finally, the Rebbe Rashab came to himself, and he asked the previous Rebbe, "What is today? What Torah portion is this week?" And then the Rebbe Rashab um, began praying the evening prayer, but not the way he did usually. That night, the Rebbe Rashab prayed the evening prayer with the same intensity and length that he would pray in Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, it's known among all the Rebbeim, all the Chabad Rebbes, that they would pray a very lengthy prayer night of Rosh Hashanah. And the Rebbe Rashab prayed that evening prayer as if it was Rosh Hashanah, and with the tune of the Alter Rebbe, which only was sung then on Rosh Hashanah, but he sang that tune on that occasion. And he told his son that the next day he's going to have to go visit various places. And the previous Rebbe understood that he didn't want the previous Rebbe to accompany him. So Rebbe Rashab went wherever he went, and the previous Rebbe is in this hotel they're staying in. And every so often, a messenger comes with a box from one of the stores of women's clothing, and delivers for where Mr. Schneerson is staying. Here is another box from, and the previous Rebbe thought that the Rebbe Rashab had purchased gifts for his daughters, but there were so many boxes that had come. He didn't even know what this was about. When the Rebbe Rashab returned, he told the previous Rebbe to prepare. They're going to travel somewhere. They went together after ready to travel. They went together on the train, and they told the previous Rebbe, "We're going to travel to Pressburg." They traveled to Pressburg. When they got there, the previous Rebbe wanted to hire a wagon to take them to the city. But the Rebbe Rashab said that he rather would walk. He wanted to walk. Okay. They went to walk into the city, and they meet a yeshiva student who's rushing. And the Rebbe Rashab asked the boy, "Where is the yeshiva?" And the boy didn't want to answer. I'm in a rush. So the Rebbe Rashab said, "Is that the way you treat people, guests in a city. You see that we don't know where we're going, and we need to have direction. Is that the way you do the mitzvah of welcoming guests? The boy realized like he did the wrong thing, and he told the Rebbe Rashab where the yeshiva was, and um, and he mentioned to the Rebbe Rashab that the actually I think the Rebbe Rashab was looking for not for the yeshiva for a certain inn, and the boy already felt bad already that he had been so insolent, so he told the Rebbe Rashab that the proprietor of the hotel had passed away. His name was Rabbi Avram Bik, and now his widow and their children are are in mourning. So Rabbi Rashab um, followed him into the yeshiva, and he went over to one of the other students in the yeshiva, and he started discussing with him the subject he was learning. He went back to this boy also who had given directions and also had discussed learning with him as well. And then the Rebbe Rashab went with the previous Rebbe to go visit the widow of Rabbi Avram Bik. And the previous Rebbe realized that at the time that the Rebbe Rashab was in this trance, that was the time when this Rabbi Avram Bik had passed away. And the Rebbe Rashab began talking with the widow, and the widow had 3 daughters, and they were all marriageable age, and the Rebbe Rashab guided the conversation to talk about marriage. And she said she's really distraught because she doesn't know how she's going to find anyone for her daughters, especially now. In those days, it was customary to give an adunya, to give the father of the bride would give a gift to the groom to help the young couple start their lives, and a dowry, an adunya. And she has no money for an adunya. She has no way of getting clothing for her daughters in order for them to go and to try to find their soulmate. She would want to buy them clothing before. And the Rebbe Rashab, as he's talking to her, brings in these packages, and so tells her, "Don't worry, we have these clothing for your daughters. It's fine." And he told her right on the spot that he has a suggestion for her, for her daughters, and he suggested the boy he had spoken and learning with for the oldest daughter, the boy who had given direction to the second daughter, and the previous Rebbe said that 5 years later he had visited again Pressburg, and was happy to discover that these these girls, Baruch Hashem, were happily married, and they're living a um, a life of Torah and reverence for Hashem. And this was something um, that the Rebbe Rashab had arranged with divine inspiration to know what was going on and who to speak to and who they should marry. It's just a heavenly story. Um, there was once a Jew who visited the Rebbe Rashab, whose son was very, very sick. He was a very wealthy Jew, Rabbi Yaakov Landau, who was the rabbi in with Rebbe Rashab, had consulted various things as in general, the Rebbes of Chabad would not give halachic rulings. Instead, there would be a rabbi that they would consult to as various halachic questions came up. So Yaakov Landau saw this happen. He said that this guy came to Rebbe Rashab, and he was a very wealthy Jew, was visiting, and he wanted a blessing for his son who was sick. So the Rebbe Rashab gave him a blessing. But the guy told Rebbe Rashab, "I want to promise." And the Rebbe Rashab said, "I cannot promise." So this man said to Rebbe Rashab, "If you can't promise, you can't promise. But if you can promise and you're not, doesn't the Torah say, Lo yisamed al dam re'echa? Doesn't the Torah tell us not to stand by when your brother is by the blood of your brother? How can you ignore the blood of your brother?" That's what he told the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab asked him to leave the room for a minute. He came back, and then the Rebbe Rashab gave him a blessing and said to him, "Your son is going to be okay." And Baruch Hashem, he recovered. Um, I don't know the meaning of the story, but there was a similar story that the Rebbe shared about another similar incident where someone came to the Rebbe Rashab asking for a blessing. The Rebbe Rashab said, "I cannot help you." The Rebbe Rashab's father, the Rebbe Marash, passed away when the Rebbe Rashab was only 21 years old. The Rebbe Marash was 48, and he didn't want to accept the leadership of Chabad for many years, for 15 years, because he felt it was disrespectful to his older brother, Reb Zalman Aaron. Anyways, but the Rebbe Rashab did say Hasidic discourses immediately after his father passed away. Just didn't accept officially the Rebista to be the leader of Chabad movement until years later. Anyways, this guy came to Rebbe Rashab and he asked for a blessing. The Rebbe Rashab said, "I cannot help you." When the man left Rebbe Rashab, you can imagine he was completely broken and distraught. And he met the Rebbe Rashab's brother, Reb Zalman Aaron, outside, and he said, "What happened?" He said, "I went to your brother." He said, "I can't help you. You can't help me." So Reb Zalman Aaron, the older brother, went into the Rebbe Rashab and he said, "How could you do this? This Jew needs help, and you're saying you can't help him." The Rebbe Rashab said, "You should come back in again." He came in, and the Rebbe Rashab gave him a blessing and helped him. The Rebbe once commented on the story, and he said, "It's not if you could help him, why didn't you help him the first time?" And the Rebbe answered that in order for this person to be able to receive the blessing that he had desired, he needed to have more merit. He needed to be more of a vessel for those blessings. And the brokenness he experienced by the Rebbe Rashab's telling him that he can't help him, that actually made him a vessel to receive the blessing. Because he said, "I cannot help you," that actually made him open to be able to receive the blessing. It's ironic, but I'm telling him that I can't help you. That broke him to the point that now he was able to receive the blessing. Perhaps this is also what happened in this story as well with Rabbi Lando shared. Rabbi Mendel Morozov shared another interesting story about the Rebbe Rashab that he heard from Michal Teitelbaum. Michal Teitelbaum had a close relative, a woman who needed a operation, and he wanted to ask the Rebbe Rashab for a blessing for his relative. And the Rebbe Rashab at that time was in St. Petersburg. So he traveled to St. Petersburg and he wanted to ask Rebbe Rashab for a blessing, but the Rebbe Rashab was staying in a hotel. And he just waited there. He waited outside the hotel room and hoping that he would get a moment with the Rebbe Rashab. Shortly after he arrived, the Rebbe Rashab left the room, but he went immediately across the corridor to a restroom. And then this Michal Teitelbaum didn't leave. He waited. The Rebbe Rashab came out, washed his hands, and as customary, we say a blessing after going to the restroom. The blessing is Asher Yotzar. The one who we bless Hashem, was formed man with wisdom, and he gave the Rebbe Rashab the letter, and the Rebbe Rashab reciting the blessing. And I heard two versions of the story. One version of the story is that the Rebbe Rashab, I heard this one of the Teitelbaums actually, that the Rebbe Rashab said, he finished the blessing, Hashem is a doctor of all flesh and he performs wonders. And then he said, your relative does not need an operation. Another version of the story, which I read tonight, was that the Rebbe Rashab was reading the letter as he was saying Asher Yotzar. By the same thing, he finished the blessing, Hashem performs miracles and wonders, and she does not need an operation. And Baruch Hashem, miraculously, she was cured without an operation. The Rebbe Rashab once said that, says in the Talmud, a person has to get drunk on Purim until they cannot tell the difference between blessed as Mordechai and cursed as Haman. That's what the Talmud says. And we know what Chassidus says about this, that you're on Purim, you're supposed to reach a level in the celebration of Purim that not only does your mind say, does your heart say that blessed is be Mordechai and cursed be Haman, but that there's a super rational conviction that Torah and mitzvahs and Mordechai should be blessed, not just with your mind. So the Rebbe Rashab once said that the word Puria, which means Purim, also means bet. And the Shema, when you say Shema before retiring, you have to reach a level of Ad Yoda. You have to be shikr. You have to, so to speak, be drunk by reciting the prayer of Krishna Almita, the prayer of Shema before retiring. That has to bring you to a state of blessed be Mordechai. In other words, Just like on Purim, is to reach a level beyond logic and reason, so too every night before going to sleep, saying the Shema prayer is supposed to also bring you to that Purim-like state of Adlu Yoda, beyond logic and reason. Um, if I remember correctly, in Hayom Yom it says something similar. It says how when you say Kriya Shalmita, it's sort of like the confession before passing away, except you're not leaving the marketplace completely, but you're making an accounting for that day for what has to happen the following day. So I want to share with you one last story of a chassid. Not until now we're saying the stories of tzaddikim, stories that are Rashab. I want to share with you a story of a chassid, indeed a chassid who was also a very prominent and unique chassid. Um, a chassid that Rashab. But as the chassidim say, when you hear a story of a rebbe, it doesn't have the same effect as when you hear a story of a chassid, because a chassid is one of us. A tzaddik is on a different level, so you might think it's not relevant. But this chassid is also on a higher level. So either way, stories like this. Rabbi Zalman Chanan shared a story that he heard from his father, Chaikel Chanan. One of the chassidim, the Rebbe Rashab, his name was David Haradaker. David Haradaker was a very unique chassid, and he a very unique level of prayer, of reverence for Hashem, of knowledge of Torah, to a level that we have no understanding. And he had a problem. He had a tremendous pain in his foot, and he went to a doctor, and the doctor says that his foot has to be amputated. Now, according to Jewish law, amputation of a foot is not such a simple thing, meaning there are those who try to preserve the foot and they want to be buried with their foot. I'm not sure exactly what the issue was, but Reb David said he doesn't want to leave the world. The pain of amputating the foot doesn't bother him as much as he doesn't want to leave the world a balmum. Doesn't want to leave the world missing a foot. It was something that on his level, spirituality, based upon what it says in Code of Jewish law, something about the preservation of the body being intact, that would somehow help him spiritually. That's what bothered him. It wasn't the pain of amputating the foot that bothered him. It was the idea of leaving the world of balmum. So he told Rabbi Chaikel, says, you know doctors, you know the world, please find me a doctor. I don't want to cut off this foot. So Rabbi Chaikel was then a yeshiva student. He wasn't married, but he did have some connections and some funds, and he managed to get through to a prominent doctor. And in those days, it was already the Soviet regime, and it was very hard to do anything. But secretly, he paid some money to this doctor, and he got him in the head of the line. And the doctor saw Reb David, or Dr. David Kidman. The doctor examines him, and the doctor says, the doctor really, he was impressed by Reb David Kidman. Reb David Kidman was very poor. He was dressed in tattered clothing, but he could tell that this guy was a special guy. He could tell there was some refinement in his face. You could tell this guy's unique, he's unusual. And he really wanted to help him. But he told the family, he told him, go home and I'll tell you my final answer after wait for the test to come back. And the test came back, he said that unfortunately the illness has spread and there's no other choice except for to amputate this foot. So Reb David was so distraught. He was ois mensch. He came to Reb Chaikel. What do I do? Reb Chaikel, please find me another doctor. Find me another doctor. So Reb Chaikel did some research. He was really, he had spent so much money already, but this guy was so distraught. He wanted to do something for him, and he researched, and he found this concept, which was very foreign at the time, of homeopathic doctors. He found this doctor. He paid a huge amount of money, and he got him an appointment with his homeopathic doctor, which was so rare in those days. The homeopathic doctor examined him and said that there is a cure, but it's a very complicated cure. He has to go to an area where he could be in a warm climate, under the sun, in the sand, minerals, a whole long regimen of things he had to do. But he said if he does this for half a year, he will be cured. And sure enough, Reb David was elated. He was so excited. And he went Reb Chaikel paid for this whole thing. He paid for him to go to be in this place and to support him while this was happening. And he took care of him and he funded this whole thing. And Reb David returned after this trip to recuperate. He returns and he went back to the original doctor. The original doctor was shocked when he examined him. He said, "You're a holy man." He couldn't believe that he recuperated from this illness, because the way he understood medicine, there was no way this guy could recuperate like this. Anyway, so Reb David Haradaker, um, when they made a little farbrengen, made a little gathering together, and before David was going to part ways from Reb Chaikel, and after the farbrengen went till late in the night, and Reb Chaikel escorted Reb David to the train station, and Reb David puts his hands on Reb Chaikel's shoulders, and he says to him, with tears in his eyes, "Is you really saved my life. I don't know how much you had to spend for me, for my cure, and I want to repay you. I want to repay you, and I want to give you a blessing. The blessing I want to give you is that they should never interrogate you. They should never arrest you. In those days in Soviet Russia, it was very common for people, Hasidim, to be arrested for teaching Torah and Torah on the ground, and it was more common than not to be arrested. The average person who was religious was arrested for some reason or other. But this blessing, and this was Rizr B'chaikel, they wished each other farewell, and Reb Chaikel miraculously, although he was very involved in supporting in the funds that went for the yeshiva of the Rebbe Rashab there in Russia, which meant that he was really really suspect, really not just suspect, but if they would find the money in his home, it was meant to be used for yeshiva, but they never searched his home. They never searched his home. He never went to prison. All of his friends were in prison many times. All of his friends who were much poorer than him and never handled funds, their homes were searched many times, but his home was never searched at all, ever. And he attributed this to the blessing of Rav David Haradak. Interesting postscript to the story. This Rav David, this Reb Chaikel, he once went, after leaving Russia, he went for business to Sweden, and there's some inconsistency in his papers, in his business, whatever, I don't know exactly what it was, and he was arrested. He spent a few days in jail, and he wrote to the Rebbe after being in jail. He said, "It doesn't make sense. I was in Soviet Russia, and I was never put in prison. Now in Sweden, I was put in prison. There must be something more to the story. Why is this happening to me?" And I didn't see the letter. This is why I heard from someone else that the Rebbe responded something to the effect of that you were given a mission from the previous Rebbe, and that mission wasn't paid attention to. What was the mission? The mission was to help the yeshiva, the girls' yeshiva, the base Rivka. He said, "I never got the letter." He wrote to the Rebbe, "I never got the letter." But the Rebbe said that even though he never got the letter, since this was his sole mission, and this wasn't done, therefore he needed that was the purpose of his imprisonment, to realign him with where he needed to be. Anyways, the point is that not only the blessing of tzaddik is miraculous, not only is our tzaddikim capable of this kind of sensitivity in a way that's beyond description, but here you see a chassid. Yes, a chassid is on a higher level than us, but a chassid who, first of all, Reb Chaikel, who gave of himself so much to help his friend, and Reb David, who gave him such a blessing that protected him from the eyes of the. He said, the words he told him, I forgot. The words he told him were, "Their eyes shouldn't see you. Their eyes should not look at you." And so we have to realize the power of the blessings we give each other. The Rebbe Marash once said that just like it says in heaven, the heavenly court cannot do anything to a Jew. What happens is that the heavenly court shows you a video, so to speak, of your life, and they ask you to rule about your life. You should give a ruling. If someone does A, B, and C, what would you say? So and then the heavenly court says, okay, that ruling you gave about someone else was actually you. That's what happens in heaven. So Rebbe Marash said, it doesn't only happen in heaven, it happens on earth. When you say another Jew deserves good, another Jew deserves a blessing, and you bless another Jew, So that blessing you give someone else, is also conferred upon you as well. The blessing you give, you say this person is so and so because they did such a good thing, and you also did such a good thing. The blessing given another person is transferred. That Rashi said we have to realize the wondrous effect we have in blessings we give each other. Anyways, on that note, let's have a good Tavach, a freiliche Tavach, a gesund Tavach, for each of us and all of us. We have good news by all of us, each of us. Klal Yisrael this week, good news for Eretz Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, and to the embassy, good news coming in Mashiach Karev Mamish. A good Tavach.
Amen. Thank you.
Gvach Beryl, Gvach Ben Chayil, Gvach Chayil Sarah, Gvach David, Gvach Yosef, Gvach Michal David.
Good.